And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, Meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather with the forecast issued Wednesday, September 24th. Starting out, I wanted to point out that there's a few SIGMETs going on out there for the Aleutians and far western Bering Sea. First of all, there's some volcanic ash that's coming actually into the flight information region in the west. That's surfaced to about 16,000 feet or so. And then we also have a high-level SIGMET for the heavies that intersects the jet routes due to the jet stream that we'll show you in a couple of minutes here. That is from flight level 300 to flight level 400, so way up for the heavies, mainly cargo and passengers. Okay, so for our flying weather, Thursday morning, first of all, we have some IFR along the Chukchi Sea coast and spreading inland short of the Brooks Range, also a little bit on the far eastern end of the Beaufort Sea up to the Alcan. Also, the central Alaska range has got some IFR conditions with some marginal VFR extending down into Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai Peninsula, and on over toward the Panhandle. Also, much of the Bering Sea and marginal VFR conditions. For the Panhandle, we have IFR conditions from about Icy Bay on down to the higher terrain near Hyder. Also a threat of some thunderstorms Thursday morning all along the Gulf Coast as a very prominent low pressure system moves up. So for Thursday afternoon, we've got, again, some IFR along the Beaufort Sea coast on up to the Brooks Range, right along the Alcan. A little bit of IFR for Bristol Bay, otherwise marginal VFR across the North Slope, and then extending all the way down across much of south central and southwestern Alaska. Extensive areas of marginal VFR for the Bering Sea, also for all along the Gulf coastline. And again, IFR for the Panhandle, particularly for the higher terrain, but generally inland, and marginal VFR elsewhere. Then for our flying weather for Friday morning, I've indicated a couple of low pressure systems that are very significant here. One is dropping down from about St. Lawrence Island or so. It's moving toward the south, and this is Friday morning. Marginal VFR all along the west coast, also for the North Slope, also the eastern ports of the central interior. A little bit of IFR just for the Copper River Basin itself. And then lots of marginal VFR for the central and eastern Gulf of Alaska coastline. Higher terrain for the Panhandle, we have IFR conditions. And then we have a very important hurricane force low that's going to be moving up just off of Haida Gwaii, and it's aimed right about Baranof Island where it makes landfall. Also a threat of thunderstorms in the Gulf of Alaska. So Friday afternoon, that low moves to Baranof Island. Still a threat of thunderstorms in the eastern Gulf of Alaska, mostly marginal VFR, but the wind and the turbulence on Friday is going to be very, very significant, along with low-level wind shear. So I want you to mark that on your calendar that Friday is going to be very poor flying conditions in southeast Alaska. Otherwise, lots of marginal VFR for the eastern part of the mainland, a few areas of local IFR, probably due to fog. Also, we have that low now has moved down to Nunivak Island. On the backside of that low, it's going to be very windy and turbulent. And also probably some low-level wind shear as that wind extends further south and eventually gets to the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. So Friday afternoon, the outlook is really looking poor for a lot of southern Alaska. So let's take a look at our pass conditions for Thursday. Anaktuvik Pass VFR with marginal VFR for the northern entrance. Same thing for Adigan Pass VFR with marginal VFR, northern entrance. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both marginal VFR all day. Rainy Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR in the afternoon. Windy Pass, marginal VFR expected all day. Isabel Pass, IFR starting out in the morning, becoming marginal VFR. And then for Mentasta Pass, VFR, but marginal VFR areas on either end of the pass area. So some of that marginal VFR might make it into the pass. And then Tahita Pass, Tanita Pass, marginal VFR, and Portage Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR. And Chilkoot and White Pass with that, with the weather systems that have been coming across, both passes are expected to be IFR with turbulence and low-level wind shear. So for our freezing levels on Thursday morning, a 2,000-foot freezing level extends southward over most of the mainland portion. In the early morning, you can expect the freezing levels of the northern two-thirds of the state to be below freezing at the surface, and including the mountaintops. However, there's a little bit of warm air that goes up into the Chukchi Sea. 4,000-foot freezing level as you get a little bit further south, and then 6,000. Folks, that really looks like fall. Summer's over. So looking at our icing on Thursday, one pocket up by Udiagavik of considerable moderate, that's 2,000 to 6,000 feet. Most of the North Slope, again, isolated moderate. Some isolated moderate coming down across the eastern tip of Siberia to St. Lawrence Island, about 2,000 to 8,000 feet. And then for the rest of the state, one area of considerable moderate in the central and the eastern interior, and then considerable moderate all the way from eastern Prince William Sound across the Panhandle, and then a slight risk of thunderstorms. So we have to include mixed or even clear icing for scattered towering cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds up to flight level 220. So for our jet stream, first of all, I want to mention that from flight level 300 to 400 for the heavies, with that jet just south of the Aleutians, we've definitely got SIGMETs there. And I need you guys, to, if any of the heavies are tuned in here, to check the SIGMETs tomorrow out over the Gulf of Alaska, because that jet stream is 140 knots. And terminating the core, terminating just south of Haida Gwaii, about 130 knots, upper level low over the far eastern Siberia. So then for a 9,000-foot winds, we've got 60-knot northwesterlies going out into the Bering Sea. That's associated with that low pressure system that's going to end up by Nunivak Island. But the main low is going to be just south of Seward. And that's driving northerly winds over much of the Bering Sea and across the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And then we get into southwesterlies as you get across the Gulf and moving into the Panhandle. The core of that system is well south of the Gulf, but 40 knots easily seen, over parts of the Panhandle. And then our 3,000-foot winds on Thursday, we've got, again, 55 knots coming off of Russia, and then about 50 knots coming off the Alaska Peninsula associated with the low that's just south of Seward, and then 40 knots in the Gulf of Alaska, and that has set up some turbulence. First of all, for the Panhandle, the considerable moderate for the Panhandle will be mainly over the higher terrain and northern sections, but some isolated moderate over the entire Panhandle and out to the Gulf Coast, and that's surface to 6,000 feet. Also a risk of thunderstorms, so again you get turbulence with all the cells that are going to be out over the Gulf. Then we have a small area, surface of 3,000 feet over southwestern Alaska, and then also all along the Aleutian chain and much of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 3,000 feet with low levels of wind shear. So folks, be really safe out there. Think about Friday and be sure and check on any SIGMETs. Get the latest updates for your pilot weather briefing. Do file a flight plan, and please fly safe out there. Friday is going to be a really rough day for southern Alaska. Thank you.